The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Where there once had been birdsong and wind rustling the pines, now there was only soot and silence. A blackened clearing lay in the heart of the mountain woods. Charred earth stretched in all directions, broken only by skeletal tree trunks that stood like tombstones. Ash drifted in the breeze, like snow from a nightmare. At the center of it all, surrounded by scorched wood and melted metal, something moved. A bear cub. Small. Soot-covered. Thin. It dug, frantically, clumsily, at the base of a blackened beam that had once been part of a porch. Its claws scraped against stone and cinders, over and over. Not searching for food. Not out of instinct. Out of desperation. Claire Ramsey, a wildlife field medic, spotted the cub during a post-fire survey. Her job was to check on displaced or injured animals after wildfires swept through the northern ridge. This was the third cabin she had passed that morning, but it was the first with movement. She raised her binoculars and froze. The cub wasn't running. It wasn't afraid. It was digging. "Are you hurt?" she whispered, even though the cub couldn't hear her. She moved closer, slowly, carefully, boots crunching through layers of black dust and brittle debris. The cub didn't notice her. It just kept digging. The closer Claire got, the more her stomach turned. This had been a home. A small mountain cabin. She could see the outline of a kitchen stove, the remnants of a porch swing, the metal springs of what had once been a crib mattress. And the bear cub was clawing at it. No, not at the mattress. At something beneath it. It whimpered softly. And then it let out a sound Claire had never heard from a bear before. A cry. Not a roar. Not a growl. A broken, breathy whimper, like mourning. Claire radioed her team. Found a juvenile bear. Solo. Behavior's strange. Doesn't seem injured. It's digging at the foundation of a cabin fire. Might be denning, or grieving. Grieving? The voice on the other end asked, skeptical. She looked again at the scene. The blackened crib frame. The cub's filthy fur. The way it kept glancing toward the rubble like it was waiting for something to appear. "Yes," she whispered. "Grieving." By the time backup arrived, the cub had stopped digging. It was now lying beside the ashes, one paw still resting on the burned earth. Its chest rose and fell with slow, shuddering breaths. Claire knelt nearby. "Hey, little one, what are you looking for?" The cub didn't flinch. She could have sworn it looked at her. Right into her. As if asking her a question she didn't know how to answer. The team secured the cub, gently, carefully, and transported it to a nearby sanctuary for evaluation. It didn't resist. Didn't claw. Didn't cry out. It simply stared out the window as they drove away, ash still stuck to its fur. Claire watched it from the passenger seat, unsettled. This wasn't just a wildfire zone, she murmured. Her partner glanced at her. "What do you mean?" She looked down at her field notes, then back at the image burned into her brain, the cub, curled beside the crib. This was home. 6 months earlier, before the fire, the cabin had been alive with laughter. Tucked between two hills, the little off-grid home belonged to Henry and Mara Lewis, and their 4-year-old daughter June. They weren't survivalists or hermits, just a small family trying to live quietly, healing from years of loss and noise. Henry worked wood, carving toys and furniture. Mara grew herbs and painted wildflowers on glass. June spent most of her time barefoot, chasing frogs and telling stories to squirrels as if they understood every word. She had a favorite stuffed rabbit. She named it Pepper. The bear cub came one morning in late spring. It was tiny. Far too young to be alone. Probably no more than 4 or 5 weeks old, clumsy, wide-eyed, and trembling with exhaustion. June spotted it curled beside the woodpile, whimpering. Henry was cautious. It could be sick. Or orphaned. But June was already moving. She sat a few feet away and began humming softly. The same lullaby Mara sang at bedtime. The cub, remarkably, didn't run. Just stared with huge black eyes, as if stunned to be seen. Mara stepped outside with a blanket and a bowl of milk. The cub didn't resist. It drank. Then curled against the wall. Then stayed. They named him Ash, for the black patch on his right paw and the soot-colored tips of his ears. Ash stayed close, always near the cabin, often peeking through the window when June played with her toys. He never left her side during her outdoor adventures. He grew fast, more fur, more strength, but the same calm presence. Every morning, June would wake up and call out, "Morning, Ash." And there he'd be, sitting by the porch waiting. The bond between them was unusual. Ash was not domesticated. The Lewises knew better than to treat him like a pet. But there was no denying the connection. He never threatened. Never wandered. He followed June like a shadow and lay beside the crib when she napped. Henry built a small sleeping den for Ash behind the cabin, but by midsummer, the cub preferred the space just under the porch, where he could still hear June's giggles through the wood. Locals heard rumors. Some shook their heads. It's not safe. Wild animals belong in the wild. But others came by just to watch. Quietly. Respectfully. Never seen anything like it, an old park ranger whispered once. It's like he thinks she's his sister. Or mother. One day, June fell and scraped her knee near the stream. Ash panicked, circling, grunting, nudging her with his nose. Mara ran from the cabin, but not before hearing the bear's distressed cries. He didn't come until June laughed and showed him the bandage. That night, Ash lay outside the window for hours, ears twitching at every sound. He didn't sleep until she did. Then came the drought. Dry winds. No rain. Warning signs. The hills turned brittle. The trees crackled. Henry kept a shovel and bucket by the door, just in case. But no one could have prepared for what came next. One lightning strike. One fallen tree. One gust of wind. And by the time the fire crews reached the ridge, the Lewis family cabin was gone. Only Ash remained. And a bear cub, who refused to leave it behind. At the Pine Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary, most rescued animals kept their distance. They hid in corners. Shrank from human contact. Prowled nervously when approached. But Ash didn't behave like a typical cub. From the moment he arrived, he was searching. Not for food. Not for shelter. For something else. Claire noticed it the second day. Ash ignored his bedding. Ignored the climbing logs. Even ignored the sweet mash bowls left out for him. Instead, he pressed his nose to the glass of the quarantine enclosure, staring past the trees. "He's waiting," she murmured. "For what?" another staffer asked. Claire didn't know yet. But she could feel it in the pit of her stomach. This wasn't a normal bear cub. When they finally moved Ash into an open-air habitat, he went straight to the farthest corner and began digging. Always in the same spot. Every morning. Every evening. His paws would bleed. His claws chipped. They placed enrichment toys in the enclosure to distract him. Nothing worked. Until Claire got an idea. She brought in a child-sized crib, salvaged from the storage shed, left over from a fawn rehabilitation project years ago. She didn't expect anything to happen. But the moment Ash saw it, he froze. That night, the security cameras caught him lying beside the crib. One paw rested gently on the wooden frame. He didn't sleep. Just stared at the slats, breathing slow and deep. It broke Claire's heart. "He remembers," she whispered. "He remembers everything." Word about the morning cub spread across the sanctuary and beyond. Some visitors cried quietly as they watched from behind the glass. Others stood in stunned silence. Wildlife experts from the state came to observe. Some dismissed the behavior as trauma response. Others admitted it resembled grief. None had seen a cub behave like this, not with such consistency, such sorrow, and such purpose. Then came the breakthrough. One day, a small girl named Lucy, visiting the sanctuary with her parents, approached the enclosure holding a soft toy, a rabbit, not unlike the one Ash used to see in June's crib. Ash noticed. He stood up, slow and deliberate, and walked toward the glass. The girl held the rabbit up. Ash pressed his nose gently to the barrier. Lucy smiled. "He likes pepper." Claire froze. "What did you say?" Lucy shrugged. "Pepper. That's what my sister called her bunny." Later that day, Claire reviewed the fire incident report again. The names leapt off the page. Henry Lewis. Mara Lewis. June Lewis. And beside June's name, known to sleep with a stuffed rabbit named Pepper, possibly left behind. Claire's chest tightened. That's what he's been digging for. That's what he wouldn't leave behind. Not food. Not a den. A toy. A memory. A friend. That night, Claire placed a new stuffed rabbit in the crib. Ash didn't growl. Didn't cry. He just curled up beside it. And for the first time since the fire, he slept. The bond between Ash and the stuffed rabbit became something of a legend at the Pine Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. Visitors lined up each weekend to glimpse the growing cub nestled beside the crib, paw protectively draped over the soft toy. He no longer tried to dig or claw at the enclosure walls. He simply stayed close to Pepper, the new version, a replacement, but clearly meaningful to him. For months, Ash grew stronger, physically and emotionally. His fur thickened, his appetite returned, and his eyes no longer looked quite so lost. But then, something changed. It began subtly. Ash would pace more often. He'd stand at the far fence and sniff the wind. He stopped sleeping near the crib. Instead, he stood alert at night, ears flicking, body tense. One morning, he refused food. The next, he ignored the rabbit altogether. By the end of the week, Ash was gone. It happened sometime between 2 o'clock and 4:30 a.m. A thunderstorm had swept over the sanctuary, soaking the grounds and rattling the forest. When the staff arrived in the morning, the gate to Ash's enclosure was open. The latch had been damaged, likely by fallen debris or wind. The camera feeds were static from the storm surge. Ash had simply walked out. Claire was devastated. He was just starting to heal, she whispered, gripping the fence with white knuckles. He wasn't ready. But deep down she knew. Ash wasn't running away. He was going back. Search teams combed the perimeter. Wildlife drones were launched. Local rangers were alerted. No tracks. No sightings. Only one clue remained, a single muddy paw print pressed beside the crib, and next to it, a faint impression of the stuffed rabbit, like it had been gently touched, and then left behind. 2 days passed. Then 5. Then 10. And still, no sign of Ash. The sanctuary's phones rang off the hook. News outlets replayed the story of the grieving cub. Comments poured in. He left to finish what he started. He was never meant to be caged. He still remembers what he lost. Claire tried to remain hopeful. But grief crept in. Not just because the cub was gone, but because his journey, whatever it was, might have ended in silence. In more loss. Then one night, Claire received a phone call. It was from Noah Linwood, a volunteer firefighter who'd helped respond to the original cabin blaze months earlier. His voice trembled. "You're not going to believe what I found." Noah Linwood's voice on the phone was shaking. "I was clearing brush near the burn zone, about a mile east of the Lewis cabin site. Thought I saw a shape moving near the ash ridge. At first I thought it was a deer, but it wasn't." Claire gripped the receiver. "You saw Ash." "Not just saw him," Noah said. "I followed him. Carefully. He didn't run." What was he doing? There was a pause on the line. He was carrying something in his mouth. Looked like fabric. Claire's heart dropped. The next morning, she met Noah at the old trailhead where the Lewis cabin once stood. The trees here were skeletal, the earth still scorched and quiet. Even months later, the scent of ash lingered in the breeze. "He came back here?" she asked. Noah nodded. "Same spot. Just like before. But this time, he wasn't digging. He was laying things down. Like building a nest." They followed faint tracks through the brush, broad paw prints that led to the exact spot where the Lewis family's porch once stood. Claire gasped. Because there, under a slanted piece of blackened roof, lay a small pile of objects. A baby shoe. A burned corner of a child's blanket. And a cracked ceramic button shaped like a rabbit. Claire's breath caught in her throat. "These are June's," she whispered. Ash had found them. Somehow, through ash, wind, and months of time, he had dug out what remained of the little girl who once called him brother. She knelt beside the makeshift pile and saw one more thing, a shallow hollow where Ash had been lying, curled protectively over the objects like a guardian. Noah shook his head in disbelief. "He's not just remembering," he murmured. "He's honoring her." Claire whispered, "He came back not to search, but to say goodbye." Later that afternoon, Claire returned to the sanctuary with the small artifacts, sealed in protective bags. She placed the ceramic rabbit on the crib's shelf. The others she kept in a glass case in her office. News of the discovery spread quickly. Articles, news segments, emotional tributes. The bear who remembered. The wild heart that grieved. A cub's promise, kept. Wildlife psychologists weighed in, debating animal memory, emotional intelligence, and interspecies bonding. But none could deny the evidence. Ash had returned. Not out of instinct. Not for food. But for love. Then came the message. A wildlife trail cam, set along the ridge north of the cabin ruins, picked up movement. A large bear. Bigger now. Stronger. With the same distinctive dark ear tips. The footage showed him pausing by a tree, sitting for nearly 5 minutes, then standing and looking back, straight into the lens. It was him. Ash was alive. And watching. Claire watched the footage over and over. "I think he knows," she whispered. "He knows we understood." She didn't need to bring him back to the sanctuary. Because this story wasn't about captivity. It was about remembering. Snow fell softly over Pine Ridge, blanketing the forest in silence. The sanctuary was quiet for the season, no visitors, only the staff making their final winter preparations. Claire stood by the observation window, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, her eyes drifting across the trees. The crib still sat in Ash's old enclosure. The stuffed rabbit, slightly faded now, rested inside. She hadn't removed it. Couldn't. Even though Ash had vanished months ago, something about that empty space still felt alive, like the bond never truly left. It was just after dawn when the call came. "Claire." Motion sensors picked up movement at the perimeter gate. "You're going to want to see this." She ran. Out of the main building, across the snowy courtyard, to the northern fence line. And there he was. Ash. Larger now, his fur thick and wild, his eyes deeper, wiser. But unmistakably him. Those soot-colored ear tips. That steady, mournful gaze. And in his mouth, something soft. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. It was Pepper. The original stuffed rabbit. Torn. Singed. Weather-worn. He had found it. After all that time. He had gone back. And brought it home. The staff didn't approach him. They didn't need to. Ash walked slowly to the fence, laid the toy gently in the snow, and looked toward Claire. She stepped forward, heart pounding. "You remembered," she whispered. Ash stood there for a moment longer, then turned back toward the woods. No chains. No cage. He didn't stay. He had just come to return what mattered. Claire retrieved the toy with shaking hands. The fur was scorched in places, one button eye missing. But there was no mistaking it. Pepper had survived. And so had Ash. That evening, Claire placed the rabbit back in the crib. She added a small wooden plaque beneath it, carved from old pine. For Ash, who remembered. It became the sanctuary's most visited exhibit. Not for its size. Not for its rarity. But for the story it held. Over time, the legend of Ash spread beyond the sanctuary. He became a symbol, not just of resilience, but of something deeper. Memory. Love. Loyalty. People mailed in drawings, letters, even handmade toys. Children wrote messages addressed to the bear who missed his friend. And sometimes, just sometimes, late at night, the security cameras would catch a shadow moving along the trees outside the fence line. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. Claire never tried to recapture him. Because she understood now. Ash didn't belong in a cage. He belonged in the wild. But his heart, his loyalty, that stayed. And every winter, as the snow fell and the wind whispered through the trees, she left the gate open, just a little, in case he ever came back.